Today, we're diving into a book that, I'm not kidding, can completely change the way you see everything. It's Donella Meadows' masterpiece, Thinking in Systems. And this isn't some dry academic theory. Oh no, this is a real-world toolkit for understanding the complex patterns that shape our lives, from our own habits to, the entire global economy.
Meadows kicks off her book with this exact quote, and it just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? We're always talking about the system. We blame it, we say we want to change it, but what is it? What are we even talking about? That question is exactly where we're going to start. It's time to go from just talking about the system to actually understanding it.
I mean, have you ever felt this? You come up with a brilliant plan, maybe a policy with the absolute best intentions, or even just a personal goal you're dead set on achieving, and it just falls apart. Or worse, it backfires and creates a whole bunch of new problems. It's this super common frustration, and Meadows argues it's not because we're not smart enough or we don't mean well. It's because we're not seeing the whole picture.
And that brings us right to the heart of systems thinking. It's really just a new way of seeing. Instead of breaking things down into smaller and smaller pieces to analyze them, which is what we're usually taught to do, we're going to learn to see the whole thing at once. We're going to focus on the connections, the relationships between the pieces, because that's where the real action is. To really get this idea across, Meadows uses this fantastic old story. So, picture this. There's a group of men, blind since birth, and they've never, ever come across an elephant before. They're all really curious to figure out what this amazing creature is, so they all go up to it and start feeling around to see what they can discover.
So as you can imagine, they each touch a different part and come to a very confident conclusion. The guy who grabs the leg, he says, "Aha, an elephant is a pillar." Another one, feeling the smooth, sharp tusk, is absolutely convinced it's a spear. And the one holding the wiggly trunk? Well, he insists it's a giant snake. Each one of them is describing their own experience, and for them, it's the absolute truth.
And that right there is the big lesson. See, every single one of them was right about the part they were touching. But because they couldn't see how the leg and the trunk and the ear all connected to form one giant thing, they were all completely wrong about what an elephant actually is. You just can't understand a system by looking at its pieces in isolation.
Okay, so if we want to see the whole elephant, what are we looking for? Well, Meadows says that any system, and I mean any system, no matter how ridiculously complex, is made up of just three basic things: stocks, flows, and feedback loops. So let's break them down.
All right, first up, stocks. A stock is just an accumulation of something. It's a pile, a quantity. It can be something you can see, like the water in a bathtub, the amount of money in your bank account, or the number of trees in a forest. But it can also be something you can't see, like your level of self-confidence or a country's national debt. A stock is basically the memory of the system. It's the result of everything that's happened up to that point. Now, stocks don't just sit there doing nothing. They change. And what changes them? Flows. A flow is simply the rate of change. So let's go back to our bathtub. The faucet is the inflow, filling it up. The drain is the outflow, emptying it out. If the water coming in is faster than the water going out, the stock, the water level, rises. If the drain is pulling water out faster than the faucet is putting it in, the stock falls. It really is that simple. The flows are what drive all the action.
Okay, and this is where it gets really cool. Stocks and flows are connected to each other through something called feedback loops. This is where a change in the stock actually feeds back and affects the flows that are changing it. And there are two main kinds. Over here on the left, we've got balancing loops. Think of these as stabilizers. They're always trying to hit a target. Your thermostat is a perfect example. Room gets too hot, AC kicks on. Gets too cold, heat kicks on. It's always trying to balance things out. Then, on the right, you've got reinforcing loops. These things are engines of growth or collapse. They snowball. The more money you have in a bank account, the more interest it earns, which gives you even more money, which earns even more interest. It's a virtuous cycle, or sometimes a vicious one.
So, once you start combining these basic building blocks, your stocks, your flows, and these two types of loops, you start to see the same patterns emerging over and over and over again. And a lot of these common patterns are actually traps. They're the reason we get that frustrating feeling we talked about at the beginning, where our good intentions just seem to blow up in our faces. Meadows points out a bunch of these common traps. You've got the tragedy of the commons, which is what happens when everyone acting in their own self-interest ends up destroying a shared resource, like a public pasture that gets overgrazed. Then there's success to the successful. You know this one, it's why the rich get richer. It's basically the game of Monopoly, where one winner eventually gets everything. And shifting the burden. That's the trap of addiction. We use a quick fix, like a sleeping pill, that deals with a symptom, but it keeps us from ever solving the real problem. I promise, once you learn what these look like, you'll start seeing them everywhere.
So, spotting these traps is one thing, but how do you get out of them? How do you actually change a system for the better? This brings us to probably one of the most powerful ideas in the entire book: leverage points. Think of a leverage point as a place in a complex system where one small nudge can create a huge change.
Meadows actually gives us a whole hierarchy of these leverage points, from the weakest to the most powerful. Way down at the bottom, with the least leverage, are the numbers, things like tweaking budgets or changing tax rates. It's where we spend most of our energy, but honestly, it rarely changes how a system behaves. Moving up, you get more power by changing the rules of the system, the incentives, the punishments. Even more powerful is changing the information flows, who gets to know what and when. And near the very top, changing the actual goal of the entire system. But the single most powerful leverage point of all
Is changing the paradigm. This is it, the ultimate leverage point. It's about transforming the deep-seated beliefs and assumptions that the entire system grew out of in the first place. It's the shared story we all tell ourselves about how the world is supposed to work. Change the story and you change everything.
And that leads to this really profound final idea. I mean, if the most powerful way to change a system is to change a mindset, then our whole approach to fixing things has to be different. It becomes less about brute force and control and more about something else entirely.
I just love this final thought from Meadows. The goal isn't to control the system, to master it. It's to dance with it. What does that mean? It means you have to watch it, learn its rhythm, feel its steps, and then move with it gracefully. It takes a lot of humility. It means you have to be willing to learn and adapt, and to understand that you're not outside the system looking in. You're a part of the dance too.
So there you have it, a crash course in thinking in systems. But really, this is just the beginning. The real question is for you. Whether you're thinking about your health, your job, your family, or your community, what is one system in your life that you could start looking at not as a bunch of separate parts, but as a connected, living whole? What dance are you going to learn?